The Danes have just started invading England. The stage has been set for the creation of Danelaw, the Danish provinces in England. But right now, a rather famous Viking, Ragnar Lothbrok, is planning the greatest raid in Viking history so far: the attack on Paris. Now, whether this was in fact Ragnar Lothbrok, or if Ragnar Lothbrok existed at all, is up for discussion. According to the Viking Sagas, which is a collection of legends and mythological stories, but also true stories of Viking voyages and battles, Ragnar Lothbrok was the son of Sigurd Hurring, who through war and battles had become the king of both Sweden and Denmark. Ragnar then inherited both these kingdoms on his father's death. Now, to avoid any confusion at the end of this video, it needs to be said that whether this man was the legendary Ragnar Lothbrok or not, this man did not die in the snake pit of King Aela. Ragnar was a great raider in Francia, who through a deal with Charles the Bold was given land in Turbold Frisia, which is located in today's Belgium. But the lands were lost, and there was no longer any love lost between the king and Ragnar. It is often thought that the attacks on Paris was in fact revenge for the lost lands. Nevertheless, the raid was led by a great chieftain named Ragnar. Whether it was a revenge attack or not, this was definitely an opportunistic attack, since Francia was still recovering from a bloody civil war that broke out after the death of Charlemagne in 840. In March of 845, Ragnar led a fleet of 120 Viking ships and more than 5,000 men through the Seine and looted Rouen on the way. The Vikings were now closing in on Paris. Charles had decided to leave Paris in order to defend the royal abbey of Saint Denis. He divided his forces, placing one larger force on one side and a smaller one on the other of the Seine River. This proved to be a fatal mistake, as Ragnar attacked the smaller of the armies, and since the other army was on the other side of the Seine, it was impossible for them to help or reinforce the smaller army. The army was decimated, and 111 Frankish soldiers were captured. All the prisoners were hung on the trees of the battlefield, to honor Odin, the Allfather. The Frankish army of the other side fled at the sight of this, and Charles the Bald was forced to withdraw. With almost half of the army destroyed and morale at an all-time low, Paris was undefended. However, a plague broke out in the besieging Viking army. But thanks to the advice of a Frankish captive, the Vikings fasted and the plague subsided. And now, free of the plague, the Vikings marched in, occupied Paris, and looted all of the city. The Vikings did not leave until Charles paid them the enormous Dane geld of 7,000 pounds of silver. The ransom still didn't stop Ragnar from raiding, as he was leaving Francia on his way to Denmark. Ragnar now sailed for Denmark to show Horik, the king of Denmark, his spoils and to boast of his success, so he could attract more men to sail with him next time. But Ragnar either died on the spot right as he was telling the story of his success, and Horik, fearing a Christian curse, killed all of the men that sailed with Ragnar, or Ragnar was killed by Horik, seeing him as a rival and to secure his border with the Franks. Now, it seems that Horik killing Ragnar and his men is more likely, since King Horik wanted a peace treaty with Louis the German, king of East Francia. In return for the treaty, he would punish any raider and return all loot. Then there is the most popular version of Ragnar's death. The version that tells of Ragnar and his longboats getting shipwrecked off the coast of Northumbria. He and his men survive the shipwreck, however, they meet a Northumbrian army in battle. The Northumbrians defeat Ragnar. Most of his men fell, and he was captured by King Aela. King Aela orders Ragnar to death by throwing him into a pit of poisonous vipers. It is said that as he was dying, he laughed about the revenge his sons would wreak on the English kingdoms. And it is said that his last words were these: "It gladdens me to know that Baldur's father makes ready the benches for a banquet. Soon we shall be drinking ale from the curved horns. The champion who comes into Odin's dwelling Valhalla does not lament his death. I shall not enter his hall with words of fear upon my lips. The Aesir will welcome me. Death comes without lamenting. Eager am I to depart. The Disir summons me home. those whom Odin sends for me, Valkyries from the halls of the lords of hosts. Gladly shall I drink ale in the high seat with the Aesir. The days of my life are ended, I laugh as I die.